The world is a finite place, but our growing use of resources doesn't seem to take this into account, and this cannot continue. Compression is the art and science of improving quality of life while greatly reducing resource use and eliminating toxins, doing better with less. In a finite world, doing better with less means everyone must focus on resource reduction, which is why we've set the following global challenge. By 2040, globally develop a quality of life somewhat like industrial societies today, but using less than half the virgin raw materials and less than half the energy as in the year 2000, and with no known toxic releases. This more explicit focus on reducing resource use is one of the reasons for introducing the term compression. And to help people understand the compression concepts, we've organized them into the following three categories. Why do we need to do better with less? What must change? And how can organizations change to begin doing better with less? Let's start with why. So why do we need to do better with less? The case for compression addresses the complex challenges society currently faces. We've grouped these into four broad categories: finite resources, precarious environment, excessive consumption, and globalization pushback. The first challenge is finite resources. The Earth has a limited supply of resources, and we're approaching those limits. It's taking more and more inputted energy to find and collect the energy needed to power our way of life. In other words, the return on energy is down. At one point, oil came shooting out of the ground like at Spindletop, with an estimated return on energy of 100 to 1. But now, we're working much harder in areas such as the Alberta tar sands, with returns of less than 3 to 1. But since it makes financial sense, we continue to burn cheap energy to find more profitable forms of energy, and this just doesn't make sense. And other resources required to survive, such as fresh water, are becoming scarce in many parts of the world. In addition to finite resources, we've created a precarious environment, where human activity has many unintended and unknown ecological and biological effects. For example, there's an estimated 60,000 industrial chemicals in use, yet the EPA has lab tested only around 300. Huge patches of garbage are in our oceans, potentially leaking plasticizer into the water with unknown consequences. The third challenge is excessive consumption. Our current consumption rates are unhealthy for people and the planet. And the United States is the world's consumption champion. On average, Americans drink 50 gallons of soda per year. Together, we burn more than 126 pounds of fuel every week for personal transportation. And each of us generates around 4.4 pounds of solid waste a day. Add to this the health warnings about obesity and sedentary living, and it sure looks like we're consuming more than we need. But current business models require us to consume more, not less. And with less than 20% of the world's population, industrialized regions burn about 75% of the world's energy, which means the heaviest cuts need to come from these areas. The fourth challenge is globalization pushback, where growth and inequality have led to an increasing level of global unrest. In the US, Occupy Wall Street is the most recent example of pushback, while across the world, pushback has led to the toppling of entire governments. And as businesses continue to grow, they need more roads, more power plants, and more stores to sell their stuff. But no one wants any of this in their own backyard. This graphic represents the challenges society faces, as well as their complexity and how they're interconnected. No one person can begin to understand the whole picture, but by reducing our total resource use, we can begin to reduce the size and scope of these challenges. So now we know why we need to reduce resource use. The next question is, what do we need to change to begin doing better with less? We call this compression thinking. And it means that first, we need to start thinking differently, and this new thinking needs to lead to changes in the way we run our organizations. For many, this means waking up and starting to think, and stop relying on somebody to swoop in and fix everything. In Western cultures, we tend to treat these problem solvers as heroes who climb the corporate ladder because they have all the answers. Now there's at least two problems with the hero mentality. First, it reinforces the idea that problem solving is this guy's job, not mine. And second, as problem solvers move up in the company, They've gotten used to being the hero and having all the answers. But complex and wicked problems need input from multiple perspectives and cannot be solved by superhero leaders alone. We need to move away from oversimplifying the relationship between events and begin to see the more complex relationships. But changing our thinking doesn't get us very far if we don't change business models to focus on doing better with less, which is in sharp contrast with many existing business models. Many organizations have taken a step in the right direction by adopting a triple bottom line approach. But for some of them, the focus is still on profit first, then customer satisfaction, and finally adhering to environmental regulations. But instead, start thinking about your organization as part of the physical world and how you exist to improve people's quality of life. Profit then becomes a design requirement. It's necessary for doing business, but it's not why you exist. One way to begin seeing your organization in physical terms is by doing a mass energy balance. Instead of looking solely at economic transactions, you look at the input of energy and resources into your organization, the wasted energy and resources, and finally the output of products and services valued by your stakeholders. You also need to start considering the entire life cycle of your products and services, designing for each step from cradle to cradle. Compression thinking is about framing the problem differently, asking deeper, more meaningful and strategic questions, trying out solutions, and learning from feedback. What's covered by compression and compression thinking is not unique. Instead, we're pulling together concepts and practices coming from a broad range of sources. Society faces many complex challenges that can be reduced in size and scope by doing better with less. And this will require new ways of thinking and new ways of running our organizations. But how do we make the necessary changes in our organizations to really do better with less? By striving to create vigorous learning organizations. The vigorous learning organization concepts were not imagined out of thin air. They're an amalgamation of best practices seen in companies over a 25-year period, and they'll help your organization compress its learning cycles, which will improve your ability to adapt to the rapidly changing and complex challenges that we all face. The vigorous learning organization concepts include seeing the whole, meaningful purpose, rigorous learning systems, behavior for learning, and leadership. See the whole. Begin to see the effects of your organization on the world, instead of focusing on the effects of the world on your organization. Meaningful purpose. A meaningful purpose sets your organization's direction and motivates everyone to do better. And a growing number of organizations aren't just doing better, they're improving quality of life and reducing resource use. Rigorous learning systems. This includes the learning systems and structures your organization has put into place, the problem-solving tools and methodologies, as well as the way your organization records and archives what has been learned so others can build on this information. Behavior for learning. It needs to be okay to report problems and failures. There needs to be a commitment to something like a code of behavior, and there needs to be methods to pull people back when behavior strays off course, such as in meetings when somebody's getting too negative or personal. Leadership. This style of leadership is similar to military leadership, where mission comes first, then the welfare of the troops or employees, and finally the leader's personal welfare. And always tell the truth, good, bad, and ugly. So we talked about the why, the case for compression, what, compression thinking, and how, the vigorous learning organization. Now let's think about it in a slightly different way. Society faces complex challenges that can be reduced in size and scope by doing better with less. Doing better with less will require changes in the way we think and how we run our organizations. To do this, we need to strive to create vigorous learning organizations. Think about it as a voyage of discovery. There's no set path and no answers. But as you learn, you'll find that your organization has started doing better with less.